You're listening to The Business Show on Radio Blue Mountains 89.1, and now it's time to welcome back Rob Lees from Mortgage Choice Blue Mountains and Penrith for our weekly finance segment. And today we're going to talk about bridging finance. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Andrea. How are you going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Rob.
So what finance, and in what circumstances is this kind of finance arrangement required?
Bridging finance is a short-term finance structure that enables you to get the finance you need to buy another property. So you're living in your property now, you owe money on it. Let's say you owe $300,000 and you want to buy a property for, say, $650,000. Rather than selling the property you're in now, you can buy that property or get the finance to buy that property with a bridging finance structure.
And so it's a temporary, is it a temporary
It's only
thing
temporary.
until you sell your house? Is that how it works?
Most of the lenders will only allow up to about 6 months. There's a couple that might go a little bit longer, like 12 months, but generally it's 6 months. So it's only really short term. You only really want it to be short term because, there's a lot of debt in that bridging period.
And why do people do that? Is it because they haven't sold or they found the house that they want?
Like most people actually, most families come to a point in their lives, I think every family, where you start to expand, you think, we're going to have to do something with the house we're living in now. We've either got to renovate and extend or sell and upgrade. So,
and you find a lot of the time, don't you, that the people find the forever house before.
And they said, we found our dream home.
Yeah. And they don't do bridging. Banks do not do bridging loans.
Well, the banks
over there.
don't like it.
Well, yes, they don't like it, but they tend not to.
It's not even.
And they also have this weird process where it's like a chain. They can choose to not be part of a chain, but everything else has to settle beforehand. So he's just bought a house and they're in the chain process now. And there are so many things can go wrong. And he kind of was telling me about it and I was like, God, that's so stressful. I'm so glad we don't have that here. Awesome.
Well, the bridging finance, I think it can be quite stressful.
It is. It's quite complicated, and even for some of the credit assessors. So, I was doing one with ANZ the other day, and the credit assessor didn't even know that they did it the way I was setting it up. So, they don't particularly like it. And I guess the advantage is it's smooth in that you can buy the property you want before you sell yours. But on the downside, there's risks. You've got peak debt, and your peak debt. In this example here, if the property you're buying $650, you currently owe $300. It might be around about $1 million.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
You sell the property you have now for $550. Roughly, you might say your end debt is $500. But the way it works is the lender qualifies the loan on that end debt, that $500,000, rather than the $1 million. But during that bridging period, you've got a lot of debt. I call that the scary debt, and you've got to be able to service that. Normally, the lenders will build in a buffer, or they might allow the interest to be capitalised. That is, you add it onto the loan, and the loan gets higher. But there's ways to do that. But the shorter the period, the better of that bridging period.
So, do you think that the facility?
Yeah. Downsizes rather than you saying they want to upgrade. What about down?
Well,
you need the funds for the sale to actually buy that property. So whether it's upgrading or downsizing, bridging's an option. Some of the banks have a nil end debt product available if you're downsizing.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that when you sell your property, there's no debt at the end.
So
you
you're
might be
mortgage free.
And there's so much difference between how the banks do this. I think this is, Peter, where us mortgage brokers come into our own, because they're very different products, and every bank does it quite differently.
Wow.
So it's the sort of thing where it's good to get some advice on. In terms of other alternatives, the other alternative is, the most common is, you sell your property first.
To find your
that's right. And in this market where it's hard to buy, it could take a very long time. So either you'd have to rent, or it may be that you've got to move in with the parents or the in-laws. So,
and they love that advice too.
And from a parent, buy that next property as an investment, or retain the other one as an investment, and then decide later to sell. So that'd be another alternative too.
So I guess someone such as yourself,
absolutely.
maybe process
Absolutely.
that you start looking, and that way, you can discuss all those different options.
I think that's the most helpful thing, rather than the frantic call on a Saturday afternoon. I found my dream home. If we could at least do the numbers before and you know what you're doing. yeah, that's a good way to go.
And so what things do you need them to find out? So doing your numbers?
Just the usual numbers.
Just the usual numbers?
And we can get pre-approval for bridging, so I've done a lot of that.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then
so people can then freely go looking.
That's right, and they can start shopping. So it's a
It's
much better
interesting
way
that
to go.
you
For years, and I'd say the last year I've probably done a dozen.
Yeah.
And I
Really?
think it's been because it's the right conditions, a heated market, so it can take a long time to find the property you want, but you're going to sell quickly.
Yes.
And that's what you want in bridging as well. So
Yeah.
the right conditions, and also people have a bit more equity now, whereas maybe a few years ago they didn't.
Yeah.
So we've
okay.
got the right conditions now where bridging loans are going to work.
Have you noticed that that selling pitch or?
I think a little bit. I don't
The
think we'd
media are
say
certainly
it's
reporting that, aren't they?
Yeah, it's not a buyer's market yet, but it's not weighed in the favour of vendors quite as much. But it is cooling a little bit, and it's becoming a little more reasonable.
Oh, see, I thought they said
normal.
it was becoming a buyer's market
No,
on the
I
weekend.
don't-
Still not
no,
yet?
No, I
It's a
think
long
it's
way
just
to
slow.
go.
A long way to
yeah.
go.
It's it's moving a little
Well, I
more
won't listen to the news.
to
then, I
an
tell you.
equilibrium. But prices have come down statistically. So the median price in Sydney has come down a little bit.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Rob. Fantastic
pleasure.
advice as usual. That's Rob Lees from Mortgage Choice Blue Mountains in Penrith. You can contact them on 4739 9749, or you can pop in, visit their office at 3/13 Hope Street, Blaxland. We'll see you again next week,
We'll
Rob.
see you next
It
week.
does sound like Rob's been on that bridging finance. So I think really that kind of advice is very, very helpful in, traditionally a very heightened, stressful time in your life. So that's great advice.
Absolutely.
It is.